Hey everyone, it's Primer. Today we'll be focusing on some more base identification. Specifically, we'll be looking at the space, we'll be going over a few plans for it, and then trying to come up what works and what doesn't. Just as a tip, the best way to learn from this would probably be to keep pausing this video and try to make your own conclusions about the things we talk about before I share mine. That will probably be the best way to get the most out of this. So, let's see. When we take a look at the space, what do we see here? And again, you can feel free to pause. First thing you should look for is pathing, right? We always talk about look at the shape of the base, and that will help you determine your Lalo plans. In this case, maybe we can draw something like this. And so one thing, again, that you're noticing is I'm not including the scatter. Although the scatter is somewhat close to the expo and the sweeper, I'll consider it as its own entity, which means the Lalo really won't path through it too well. Our base is actually a bit like an arc, almost like a ring, although there's some space at 3 o'clock, so that's something to consider. But as we consider our plans, of course, we're going to have to figure out some way to deal with the scatter, one way or another, or it will roast all our loons. But ignoring the scatter for now, how does the Lalo path look? Well, if we have a shape like this, which is already set out to be some sort of rotational shape, right? In this case, this space wouldn't really lend itself to be good to have some sort of funnel shape straight through the core, like this. I mean, you really can't do that just due to the pathing of the space. So let's roll that out. We'll be looking at more rotational style Lalos for this one. So in this case, we pretty much have two options. We can have a general Lalo path around this way, right? It could be somewhere along these lines, or general Lalo path this way, somewhere along these lines. And we'll be going over the different things to consider when trying to pick which is better. But first thing to consider is the sweepers, right? Again, we have two sweepers here, here, and here. And so it's generally not a good idea to allow on the sweepers unless you have a good reason to. So in this case, we wouldn't want to do something like this. Although it seems like it works, the sweepers are really annoying. Ideally, what we want to do is to be able to clear this section so then we can Lalo from this side. Right, if we can Lalo from this side, we can avoid the sweepers if we somehow take out the area at 5 o'clock, maybe even take out a sweeper as well. And so this would apply to the other side as well, right? We wouldn't want to Lalo into this side, especially since the sweeper is just going to start pushing everything to the left. It's no good. We'd ideally want to take out something this area and then again doing some sort of Lalo here. So we have our two main options, right? A Lalo clockwise or a Lalo counterclockwise, and again, somehow clearing the buildings near the sweeper, maybe with a Sui, maybe with something else. So, what's next? We've looked at the pathing of the base, so now we take a look at its weaknesses, like we talked about in part 2 of our base identification series. And so, maybe the first thing that jumps out to you is, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, a large compartment with actually so much value, right? You get the RC, the multi, the sweeper, and the eagle. Okay, so yes, a Sui in this area would be amazing. So let's keep that in mind. What else do we have? We do have nice zap value, right? We can potentially consider zapping this area, the queen, the single, and the scatter. And yes, this would definitely be good value and be justified for 6 zaps in a quake, or just 7 or 8 zaps. But the question is, does that work well with the plans we presented? Right, because we want zaps to help our Lalo pathing, not hinder it. If, for example, we were going to Lalo this way, zapping right there would be very, very bad for us because it essentially does the exact opposite of funneling. It splits all our loons, so our loons don't go into the funnel shape and just split off everywhere to the side, which is bad. So although this is good zap value, maybe this would work for a non-Lalo plan, but for the plans we've come up with, maybe this is not the best idea. So let's think of something else. Maybe our last weakness we can consider is the scatter itself. The scatter is not really close to any splash, so we can consider bat bombing it. And again, we talked about how we do need to deal with it. So in this case, we have two main options. We can try to directly target it with a blimp during our Lalo, which in this case, it would probably be a bad idea to do a sweeper, although we can keep this in the back burner. The other option is bats, dropping 3 bats here. Again, something to consider is that we do have a lot of DPS. The wizard tower is dangerously close. The air, Exo is in air, which is very annoying to our bats. And so this does seem quite risky. Maybe we'll come back to this as well. But okay, we've got our weaknesses identified. We don't have anything concrete yet, but that's fine. We can move on to our next step. And that is basically just to try out the different plans we have and evaluate the pros and cons in each, right? Based on the weaknesses, based on the shapes, based on what advantages we can get with each strategy. So if we consider our clockwise plan first, right? And this is a Lalo from this side. Perhaps the most obvious thing would be to sui the town hall, right? Where we talked about to get rid of this annoying sweeper, and then maybe RC at 6 o'clock to further improve pathing. And that would set up a decent Lalo from maybe 7, 8 o'clock, right? If we can draw some sort of funnel shape, perhaps like this, and just send straight in with some secondary groups here. And yeah, the pathing works pretty nice here. I like how it looks at first glance, but maybe we'll take a closer look to see if it's the best idea. And again, this was probably a workable plan, but we might want to work out all the kinks, make sure there's nothing that we've missed, or if there's something we can do better. So, the Lalo portion itself. We've got 2 enemy heroes. And again, normally this is okay. This is not a complete red flag, but it is something to consider, because if we have 2 enemy heroes, we're going to have to deal with it with like skelly spells, maybe headhunters, and generally it's a good idea to rage through all of this, right? I'm thinking that if we were to do some sort of Lalo entry like this, I really would want to bring 2 rages. Maybe 1 rage alongside the eagle, and 1 rage alongside the queen, right? Maybe I might even want to bring a skelly spell to tank for the initial queen shots, and so that the headhunters can do faster work on the queen, and then I might need like 3 or 4 headhunters total to get the RC as well, and I would be raging the headhunters to make sure everything goes down. So yeah, it's definitely possible, maybe warden over everything. Looking at it from an isolated perspective, it's a workable plan, but we must consider the other moving parts with this plan, and that is, well, with our RC, what do we require? Our RC at 6 o'clock, we probably will need a skelly or a freeze or an invis, whatever, to deal with that, because we can't just send a naked RC in there. The single will roast everything. So, and our town hall is not the easiest to sui. All right, we're gonna have to clear all this stuff at 3 o'clock, get maybe 2 wall breaks in. We have to deal with a CC and an enemy king, which means maybe even 2 ice golems. And yeah, that is a lot of investment. And we might have to still use our 3 bats as well, which might not even be too effective due to the air expo. So that's a lot of spells we just talked about. 2 rages, like 2 skellies, a skelly for the single, like 4 headhunters, funnel troops for the sui. That's a lot. And honestly speaking, it might not be enough, because we of course we have limited amount of spells. We can't bring an infinite amount of spells. So although this is a workable plan, we might want to consider if something is better. So at this point, you're probably already screaming at me to say, okay, why not just do the Lalo from the other side? So fine, let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at a Lalo from the counter-clockwise side. And again, we'll combine what we talked about with our weaknesses and the fact that we want to clear the stuff near the sweeper. So yeah, let's just sui straight into the 11 o'clock, see how much value we can get. So if we can maybe sui this much, and of course this would mean maybe a heavier sui, but it's definitely worth it. Maybe we can drop an RC at 1 o'clock, or we talked about how we can use the RC to support the sui to help with funneling, and they kind of go alongside each other to cross tank and also to clear some more defenses. So yeah, if we did a sui on this side, then what you might actually notice is that the bat bomb becomes a lot easier. Right? If we can get that air expo down right here, then that scatter will have no problems. Redrop the bats onto the scatter. The RC actually takes like the wizard tower as well, right here. So that's no worry to the bats either. And so that's already looking pretty good. This is a plus for this plan. And now for the Lalo, we might Lalo with something like this, right? Maybe a bit of a more narrow funnel shape. But if we were to draw it this way, that means we need secondary groups at 5 and 6 o'clock, which is fine. But yes, this would be roughly our plan. And so, are there any obvious cons to this? Well, we do want to make sure our Sui gets the value, but assuming that it does, there's not too much that stands out. There is a sweeper that we have to consider. It points this way. So if we're trying to get our Lalo to the town hall, there's a chance the sweeper just pushes everything to the side, which is pretty bad and it can actually result in a 1-star. But besides that, it doesn't look too bad. We do have a lot of damage here. We've got a queen, an inferno, and a scatter in this whole area. So that is something we actually do have to consider. All right, this is a lot of stuff right here. So we'll talk about maybe working out the Lalo more fully to see if we can address all these concerns or if they become too big of a hurdle for us. So again, feel free to pause and think about how we can perhaps minimize the possibility of issues happening here. And so what I recommend is to think about our third topic, our siege machine. We haven't used a siege machine yet. We're not using it with the Sui, and therefore we can use it with the Lalo. And again, the two relevant options here are the slammer and the blimp. With the slammer, if you've watched my previous video, you know how much I try to discourage using the slammer. Even though it's sometimes good, the blimp is usually a better option. And in this case, I will have to agree with that. There is no obvious slammer entry that can get insane amount of value. Right, there's the single covering, the air defense covering. You can't take out a scatter, you can't take out a single. So maybe the slammer is not the best idea. So we're left with the blimp. And as per my previous video, there are two possible blimp entries you can consider. The first blimp entry is actually the less common one. It's the idea where you can do something like this. As you Lalo, you can send your blimp with your Lalo, but right here. And then you can rage it or even freeze it, maybe both. And that would take out the scatter, the inferno, and the queen. Sort of like the Yeti bomb. So if I were to redraw my plan a little bit, and let's say if you were to try to follow a Lalo path more like this, and then while doing that, you sent your blimp over here, right? Because your blimp would clear out some buildings, which would change your Lalo path a bit. Then this looks pretty good, right? Your blimp gets insane value. You will have to rage and freeze if you want to get everything. And that's fine. Maybe even poison to CC's coming out. And again, your Lalo will be cross-tanking with your blimp. You wouldn't be sending your blimp by itself. You'd be sending it with the Lalo together, which requires a little bit of timing practice, but once you get the hang of it, it's really powerful. But yes, that's one idea. Does it work though? Well, perhaps the biggest thing now to consider is that our Lalo path has shifted. Right now we're going to Lalo more from a 6 o'clock side, a bit lower because the blimp takes out the defenses up higher. And so from that, this sweeper becomes even more of an issue. Right, this sweeper will be beating down our loons the whole time, especially since the loons need to go to the town hall. And considering that it's going to push everything away from the town hall, this could be pretty detrimental. If the town hall is activated, this means the loons are going to take forever to get to the town hall while the town hall beams are blasting the loons. It might even 1-star, or again, we might not be able to get a good Warden Tome. We might get some bad splits. So this is definitely a legitimate concern. But okay, maybe it's workable. Before we make a verdict, we'll consider our other option, a blimp into the town hall. Right, if we were to do a similar Lalo plan, but again a bit higher this time, including the scatter and the single, and then we were just to send a blimp straight into the town hall, the different color. And so this is our other alternative. This means we can tome over all of this stuff, all of this annoying stuff, the queen, the scatter, and the single, we can tome through all this stuff, and again, the loons are actually not slowed by the Giga Blast, as opposed to if you were to tome over the Town Hall. And so in this case, the blimp would be under tome, would go to the Town Hall, we can rage it, and since everything is under tome, it doesn't take any damage. We can even tome the headhunters to take out the queen. And so honestly speaking, this looks a lot better. Number one, because it's safer, right? We get the Town Hall for sure. Second, because our Warden ability is much better used in this area than at the Town Hall, right? If we were to Warden ability over the Town Hall, what are we actually making the loons invisible from? Just the Giga Blast, that's it. But in this case, we're toming over the queen, the scatter, the single, and the headhunters. All that stuff is tomed, which is a lot more value than just the Giga Blast, since the blimp will take care of that. And again, it's much safer. Finally, we have less issues with the blimp, right, with the sweeper, because it's fine if our loons get pushed a bit, because we don't care if the loons don't go to the Town Hall, because the blimp will have taken out the Town Hall anyways. And so the sweeper becomes less of an issue. So yes, I would say this is a better alternative than to do the direct targeting blimp option into the scatter queen single. Okay, so that is enough talking for now. Again, the summary is Sui 11 o'clock, Bat Bomb the scatter, Lalo from 8 o'clock, tome through, and blimp the Town Hall. Let's watch the replay and see how that works out for us. So I'm using Yeti at 12 o'clock to help funnel, some minions at 9 and 3, again, just picking up freeze trash, always a good idea. Now I'm making sure I can get my wall break right, using some super gops to funnel. And I'm bringing 2 ice golems, again, because I really want to get all that value. I'm not bringing any skelly spells, if you notice, because although it would have been nice here, the multi's just going to roast everything. So instead, I chose to invest in a rage. And so if you see here, a rage is great because there's so much high HP buildings, the RC, the multi, the expo, and the eagle. And so if the Sui can take that down really quickly, both through under the rage haste ability, the haste effect, and also the higher damage effect, I can get a lot more value out of the Sui. Again, the RC at 1 o'clock alongside the Sui, taking out the Wizard as well. And so here, the queen takes the enemy queen, which is really nice. I didn't plan for it, but hey, I'll take it. So RC actually heads towards the scatter, doesn't take it down. That was not the plan anyways, but it gets a few shots off the scatter, which is, it's good. There's nothing wrong with that. I like it. So I do have a zap for the headhunters, which is kind of swag, to be honest. I'm not sure why I just didn't poison it. Instead, I zapped one headhunter and missed the other. That wasn't good. But yes, I started my bats. At this point, I really should have dropped cleanup at 1 o'clock, if you notice, but I didn't. My spotters were not really helpful in that either, although I shouldn't really blame them. But anyways, poison for the headhunter. My Lalo's coming in. Here's a Tesla farm at 7 o'clock, which means I need to directly target each of them. I tried to use the hand to tank the Teslas for a little bit. Freeze on the initial scatter. It's usually a good idea to freeze once before you tome. And so now there's the tome, which also soaks up a few redder bombs, which is nice. I'm using the bats at 6 o'clock since I didn't need it for the scatter to kind of tank the air defense and single, which works kind of well. I face 3 Seeking Air Mines and a Tornado for my blimp, which is a little scary actually. My blimp almost didn't make it, but it's okay. I can freeze twice, Town Hall goes down, the loon's path. As you see, the loons are actually a bit lower due to the sweepers, or if I went for the other plan, the loons would not have made it to the Town Hall, and it would probably 1-star. And in this case, I'm actually really pressed for time here. There's 20 seconds left. It's pretty much on the dot. And I'm using my headhunters, which I swagged because the queen went down. And again, if I dropped cleanup there, it would have been better. But I barely make it in time. And so this is a nice triple. Alright, so I hope that was helpful. In summary, number 1, look for the shape of the base. Number 2, look for weaknesses. And number 3, consider all the possible slammer and blimp entries, especially all the blimp entries. So, if you found this video helpful, let me know in the comments. I'm considering making more videos like these where it's just one clip and me going in detail, going through all of them. My part 2 of the Lalo execution guide will come out eventually. I'm making it, it's taking a while, so bear with me there. But anyways, I will see you in the next one.